Well, welcome to another episode of the Daily Combat Podcast. I'm your host, Dave Stockbridge, joined as always by my co-pilot, co-anchor, co-double bicep poser, Hollywood Matt Connolly, and joined by our very special guest here with his own double biceps on display. So all viewers getting all double biceps all episode long. It's Joe the Vanilla Gorilla Brown. And very fortunately, we are also joined today by another colour, an alternative colour for those people that are watching from home. It's Daniel Whyte Dragon Whyte. So I hope you don't mind my use of your fight name there, Daniel.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. I might as well do that too. Hey, why not?
Oh, Jesus.
Now, there we go. You got your own double.
So your arms are way bigger. Have you been training?
Of course, always. No, but they're not bigger. No, it's just the angles. It's all angles and lighting, smoke and mirrors.
So Daniel, now you have been weight training, and how long have you been weight training for?
Well, I think our first session, and you might have even been present for this, Dave. I'm not sure. It was about in 1988. So probably 1988. So what's that?
And do you remember where you were? Was this in the shed? Was this with some home weights or?
No, this was at Fremont High School in the gymnasium. It was one of the PE teachers took us for a weight training session.
Yes.
And do you know you can never replicate the delayed onset muscle soreness from your very first workout. And I specifically remember the next day, the whole next week. Every muscle was just so bloody sore, and it's never been like that since. But yeah, that was the first session.
Chasing that feeling for the last 35, 40 years.
Yes. So that was about 35 years ago or something like that.
And so that was your introduction to it. And when that first episode of DOMS, when the pain started to reside, did you jump straight back into the weights as soon as you could, or was there a period of a time before you stepped back into the gym or gave it further thought?
Just jumped straight into it. But, we didn't call it DOMS back then, did we? We just said, I'm fucking sore. I'm really sore.
Yeah. There's now science involved.
All these acronyms have come into it, and it's I don't know. I just like saying, sore the next day. But jumped straight back into it. That was it. We were addicted. We had a teacher, as you probably remember, an English teacher, and he had pretty good arms, didn't he? He was like in his mid-40s. Mr. Wazelenko. He was an avid weight trainer, and he had all these veins popping out of his arms and stuff. And we were just fascinated by the whole thing, weren't we?
Yeah, that's right. It was like an example of how it could be. We thought Mr. Wazelenko was old. There was probably 32.
No, I think it was about 45.
Weights is amazing.
Yeah, it was about 45, I think, at that time.
Okay, so through your weight training and martial arts and these other physical endeavors over the years, can you remember when you started to get an interest in longevity and wondering, how long you can push your own physical envelope, so to speak?
I started getting into that from a pretty early age, so around the age of 20, 21. I had a episode of atrial fibrillation, which is irregular heartbeat. So it's an irregular sinus rhythm of the heart where the two chambers of the heart don't pump together. They start going out of sync like that, and the heart flutters. And ended up in hospital a couple of times. Now, usually it's more elderly people who get that, although very fit people and athletes can sometimes suffer from atrial fibrillation as well as other different types of irregular heartbeats. So I became very conscious of health, not just wanting to be fit or big or anything like that. I was very health conscious right from my early 20s. So back then there wasn't much internet around, so I had to do a lot of research at the library and stuff like that of how to treat atrial fibrillation, because the doctors really had no clue at the time. There was a couple of drugs that they prescribed. One of the side effects of those drugs was possible sudden death. So seriously, in the side of the papers for the side effects for the drugs was listed possible sudden death, as well as other irregular heartbeats. So I very quickly decided to get off that medication. Yes.
Was it vitamin C?
Back then, they were at least honest about it back then. So I managed
99 years
to get off that and fix it myself. And I just did a lot of research into health and
And what type of actions did you take in order to kind of settle down your heart and to feel safe in physical endeavor again? Because did it uh, put you off exercising
Oh
when
yeah.
your heart's not quite right? Like, was there a time where you had to pull back from exerting yourself too much and heavy weight training and that type of thing?
Yeah, for a couple of years, I was actually really scared to do that sort of stuff because I would feel those heart flutters and skipped beats and things like that, and it always made me worry that it was going to kick into an irregular rhythm and I was going to end up back in hospital. So, um, first thing I looked at was the obvious stuff like caffeine, things like, because I used to drink a lot of iced coffees at the time, not too much really looking back, but coffee was the first thing I got rid of. Second thing was getting a bit more sleep, not trying to, not burning the candle at both ends like we used to when we were younger, and working all night at the factory and then going out on the town all night and drinking and coming back. I mean, stuff young people do, but for me, cut all that out. Stop drinking alcohol actually altogether.
Yeah.
That can actually be a trigger for it. So
And
yeah, I
still to
stopped.
this day, you don't drink alcohol.
No, I stopped at about 2021 because of
Yeah.
that reason. Um, and other little things I started researching, like grounding, earthing. So
Mm.
getting your bare feet on the ground or at the beach, the wet sand at the beach, or damp, wet grass where you can actually earth and get rid of some of the electrical charge out of your body, because we all pick up electricity from all the appliances and the wiring and everything around us, and we are insulated from the earth. We're not grounded because we're all wearing rubber-soled shoes. So
Mm.
for millions of years, Homo sapiens walked around barefoot, or for hundreds or even thousands of years it was leather-soled shoes, and then it suddenly, only about, I don't know, 60 years ago, I guess, turned into rubber-soled shoes, and that's sort of separated us from having that connection with the earth. And I found,
So,
yeah,
so,
found that to work.
so there wasn't any connection between the heart fluctuations and massive intake of Joe Weider's Mega Mass 2000.
It could have been. I quit that too. Yeah, exactly.
No,
If you look at some of those old weight
stop
gaining
the Mega
powders,
Mass and things, the heart settled down.
yeah, I
Went
mean,
to 3,000, Mega Mass 3,000 after that. It was fine.
I think I was up to 5,000 at that
Is that the one that said sudden death on it?
point. Well,
You
no,
may have
Joe Weider
your
wasn't
life
that honest.
and die.
Joe Weider wasn't that transparent. But if you look at the ingredients in Mega Mass 2000 and Mega Mass, I mean, there's a massive ingredients list, and a lot of it is, pretty hard to decipher what it actually is. So, yeah, just,
Most of it in form of sugar, I believe.
there's a lot of that too.
Yeah.
And whey, sugar and whey. I think are the key ingredients there. So,
Oh,
this what was a like I guess a potentially a health issue that could have taken you away from weight training and martial arts for the rest of your life. You kind of lent into it and used it as an opportunity to learn more about how your instrument works.
yeah, definitely. And one of the other big things there was meditation. Got quite heavily into meditation around that time, and I think that just obviously helps calm the nervous system down a bit, and a whole lot of other things, a lot of other positive effects. So meditation was a huge one for me. That really helped. So it was a combination of all those things, dietary changes. Tried being a vegetarian for a while. That didn't really work for me.
Mhm.
But it was a whole combination of dietary factors, a few supplements like magnesium and potassium. Obviously, if you've got
Mhm.
irregular heart rhythms, those can be really helpful, and they
Yeah.
were for me. And it was just a combination of all those factors that kind of got the whole thing under control, and it wasn't really an issue after that.
Hmm. And so for somebody like Joe, he's a young athlete, 25 years of age, kind of embarking on the next stage of his professional sporting career, and then looking perhaps beyond that. What are some of the advice that you would give somebody who's kind of at the peak of their game now, but kind of with half an eye to wanting to still stay strong, fit, healthy into their 40s, 50s, and beyond?
Um, well, I'm sure that Joe would agree. A big part now is injury prevention. Firstly, isn't it? Like you can accumulate a lot of injuries. Obviously not just during fighting itself, but the training. So you definitely want to avoid joint damage. Have you had any major injuries, Joe, or at this point?
There's a list, but the biggest one is I've had a disc bulge in my back for almost 5 years now. And it was really bad at the start, but I've got exercises that sort of got me to a manageable level. But it's like I deal with it, and I'm not in pain right now. But there's always, it comes and goes when it's like crippling, and if I could get rid of anything, that would be it.
Yeah. And of course, the grappling can be pretty rough on things like that, can't it?
That's how I got it. I think.
Rolling. Yeah. That's the hard bit with that. A lot of that comes down to your training partners, doesn't it? Not training with people you trust.
Yeah, I think not so much this one. I was working in security, and I was sitting in my car for a long time, for like 12 hours in not a great position. And then I got sprawled on at training. So I think it was already there. They say if you have a disc bulge, you've already got it, but it's just not.
You're waiting for that thing
You're waiting for something for it to push against the nerve. And then, so I think I already had it, but then in wrestling,
And what are some of the more common issues, Daniel, that kind of lead to athletes kind of slowing down maybe prematurely? And what are some of those, I guess, those remediating things that you can do in order to keep yourself, strong, living longer?
I think one of the big things that you see is, especially in probably mixed martial arts, because you've got so many different facets to focus on. You've got your grappling, you've got jiu-jitsu, but you've also got wrestling, which is very explosive. You've got your striking, you got your conditioning as well. And then sometimes athletes go off and then they do weight training on top of that, but they do weight training that just really adds to the stress on the joints. It really not just doubles it up, but triples it up. So if you're doing all that heavy martial arts and combat sports training and conditioning, do you really want to then go and do, exercises that are really more for powerlifters, like heavy military press, heavy clean and jerks, heavy bench press, heavy deadlift? I mean, it's a lot of stress on the body. When you add that with all the mixed martial arts training and all the impact and the sparring and everything else, and even the pad work, all that stuff is a stress on the joints. So I think if you're going to do resistance training, and I think this goes for pretty much anyone, especially older people as well, do resistance training in a very safe way that really works the muscles and not so much, it doesn't put the joints into compromised positions and, put excess strain on the ligaments, tendons and cartilage. And, do you really need to be doing 180 or 200 kilo deadlifts if you're doing MMA or kickboxing? I know some people do, and they're very strong, and maybe you can in your early 20s, but it's a hell of a lot of stress on the body. You want to work your body in a way that allows you to do it for the rest of your whole life. I've had 2 ACL tears, both knees, ACL reconstructions in both knees, and it really compromises your ability to do certain things. So obviously it would have been far better to not have those injuries in the first place. But now I've got to work around them. So I've got to work the muscles in a very, very safe way where the joints are not put under undue stress. But 100% of the stress goes to the muscles. So you have to choose very biomechanically efficient exercises. And many, many, many exercises you see people doing are not biomechanically efficient. Like, for example, I was watching a kickboxer at the gym the other day. He was doing preacher curls like this on the preacher curl bench. Preacher curls, and a lot of people don't realize this, because you're angled like that with your arms, right? You've got the pad here where you sort of angled 45 degrees like that. When you've got that barbell in your arms, all the weight is going down. There is 100% of stress on the bicep tendon in that extended position there. When you're up here with it, there's no stress at all because it's going straight down the forearm. But if you're doing preacher curls like this, there is a tremendous amount of stress on the bicep tendon. A lot of bicep tears occur in that bottom part of the preacher curl. So
your arms look ridiculous, by the way.
I didn't hear a single thing you said.
Your arms look 3 times bigger than the last time I saw you. They're like enormous.
I don't know.
Your arm up, like Mr. Olympia put his arm up there.
nothing like that. But yeah, so the preacher curl is a very biomechanically inefficient exercise, which is potentially extremely dangerous as well. But people do it because they don't realize the physics of it. The way if you're doing a standing dumbbell curl, biomechanically it's very efficient. You know, when you're in the extended position, there is not excess or undue strain on the bicep tendon. You know, no one tears their bicep doing, you know, good form dumbbell curls, but they do tear their biceps doing massively heavy deadlifts and preacher curls and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, and of course with martial arts, the shoulders take a hell of a lot of stress. There's your shoulder, everything you do involves your shoulders, punching, elbows, you know, grappling, everything else. So if you're going to start chucking on top of that really heavy military presses, which every gym tells people to do, you're putting a massive amount of strain on the shoulder joint. You don't have to do exercises like that. There's other ways to train those muscle groups that are much safer.
So Joe was explaining before that in our last episode that he was essentially given the weightlifting Bible by his brother, and within that it was, you know, the sets, the rep range, quite that traditional bodybuilding style of training that, you know, 3 to 5 sets, working up to a work set, that 8 to 12 rep range, you know, that type of very traditional training that I think we all kind of grew up with. How has your thinking changed around training from those days to now?
For me personally, I would do, say, 30 reps for my first set, so nice and light, but that's a hard 30 reps, so, you know, almost going to failure on that 30th rep or close to failure. Second set would be about 20 reps. Now, I never used to do reps that high before, ever. So 30 reps, 20 reps, say 15 reps, and then maybe 10 reps as the heaviest set. But the last, well, pretty much all of those sets are to failure, so it's intense. But for me, at this point, I don't really go below 10 reps. There's nothing wrong with doing that, though. If you want to do 6 reps, 5 reps, that's fine too. But I don't think there's any reason for combat athletes to be doing 2 or 3 reps, or certainly not 1 rep maxes and things like that. It's just not really, I don't think it's helpful for athletics or combat sports. Maybe, you know, for specific powerlifting or weightlifting scenario, yes, but not for general athletics. Because what are we trying to do? We're trying to have general conditioning and strength and you know, decent muscular development. We're not trying to we're not powerlifters or you know, strongmen or something like that.
So what sorry, Daniel.
Yeah. So I was going to say that the main thing that differs for me now is the exercise selection. So I've got a book here. I just want to show you guys this book, Physics of Exercise Resistance. See that? Mm-hmm. That's written by Doug Brignoli, who's an absolute genius on this subject. He's a Californian, former Mr. Universe. He's now in his early 60s, but he's an absolute genius when it comes to exercise selection and biomechanics. This book shows you, like, it talks about all the common exercises that are used. So military press, you know, dips, upright rows, heavy barbell squats, all that. And it talks about how efficient they are or are not, and all the disadvantages of some of those popular exercises. And it's really amazing. Like, it goes right into the science and the physics of it. And really not a lot of personal trainers and not a lot of gyms, they don't really know about biomechanics. They don't know about the different for example, military press or any shoulder press, doesn't matter if it's barbell press or dumbbell press. The shoulders have only got about 180 degrees of rotation there, like that, from there to there. If we're doing a military press, we are putting all of that weight and all of that stress in that, especially behind the neck press, which is what we used to do in the 90s, right? Behind the neck press. It's one of the worst things you can do, because you're in that very extreme rotated position. You got the barbell behind your neck, you're going up and down, and the shoulder is just crunching in there. Almost everyone who's been weight training for years has some shoulder problems. So what do? They go in the gym and they do little rotator cuff exercises with the dumbbells like that, or the cables. They do these ones with dumbbells. And then what do? They go straight back and do heavy military press, which is the thing that's been causing their problems for all these years in the first place. What are we trying to do with military press? What muscles are we trying to? This is a question for you guys. What muscles are we trying to develop?
Anterior deltoid tricep.
Anterior
deltoid tricep.
Okay. Anterior deltoid.
Yeah.
There's an exercise you can do lying down on a flat bench with dumbbells in your hands like this, pressing with elbows in. It's very hard for me to show like this, and you're pressing like this on a flat bench with dumbbells, and that is actually the path of the front delts there. And you're not in any extreme extremely rotated point of the range of motion. It's just a nice, and all that stress goes on there, a little bit on the triceps as well, of course, but you don't have to do those overhead presses to work that particular muscle group. It's what everyone's always done, but it's just not necessary. It can work, it builds muscle, but at what cost?
Yeah.
And what are some of the more costly movements and exercises that people should be keeping away from, do you think? And especially as they're getting older or to the end of their sporting careers?
Deadlift.
I'd say overhead press would be a big one. Dips, heavy dips, or even dips in general, because when you go down to that bottom part of the dip, you're really stretching that. Dips are actually much more of a front deltoid exercise than what people think, more so than chest even, because the pathway of the chest is this basic movement here. It's not really dips. This puts a hell of a strain in the shoulders. Upright rows, same thing. A lot of strain, pinching, impingement in the shoulders up the top here. I mean, my shoulders were always sore for years, for decades, and it was mainly for doing overhead press and upright rows. What are we trying to work with the upright rows? Side delts. How do you work them? Cable side raises. That is the pathway for that particular muscle group. Heavy barbell squats, trying to work the quads, glutes. Okay, so if we do heavy barbell squats, say you do 120 kilo or 150 kilo barbell squats, probably only about 40% of that weight goes to the actual quads, maybe 30 or 40 to the glutes, maybe 20 or 30 to the lower back, and all of that spinal compression from 120 or 150 kilos. Why not work those muscle groups separately where there's absolutely zero spinal compression? There are exercises you can do for your quads, for example, that have zero spinal compression, but 100% stress on the actual quad muscles. Then you can go and work your glutes separately. Now, in sports, they always say compound movements are the best. You've got to do movements where you're working multiple muscle groups all at once. Because what I'm sort of talking about is more isolation, using exercises that really isolate each muscle group. But it's sort of based on a false premise that if you work the muscle separately, they won't be able to all work together, which is a bit ridiculous, really, because if you work your muscle groups separately, when you do use them together in whatever activity you're doing, they'll know how to work together. The body knows how to work as a unit. You don't have to do nothing but compound. In fact, you don't even have to do compound movements, because when you're doing your martial arts, Joe, you know this, when you're doing sprawls, they are your compound movements. Yeah. When you're doing, when you're hitting the Thai pads, I mean, you can't get more of a compound movement than that, using your entire whole body. Every kick, every punch, every sprawl you do, basically every movement you do, it's a compound movement. So do we really have to do all that in the gym as well? I don't know, something to think about.
So the thing with when you were saying before about people getting injured, everyone that injures themselves in the gym that I work at is always deadlifts, always. I see people for a couple of weeks, they come back, I say, where you been? Oh, I've been hit myself. How'd you do that? Deadlifts every single time. It's just so easy to get it slightly wrong, one rep, and then bang, your lower back's popped out.
Or you get to the end and you do one lazy one at the end. Think, I'll just make it 8. Got to make it even.
And that's right. Yeah. You guys are so right, Matt. That's exactly it. You sooner or later you will do a bad rep. You can't not. Because people go, oh, but if you got good form, you won't hurt yourself. Yeah, but you can't. You will do a bad rep at some point. You will stuff up your lower back at some point. We've all done it. Like you said, everyone's done it. Or even worse with the over-under grip. That when you've got that under grip on the barbell for your deadlifts, that's when the biceps. That's when they get those bicep tears. I mean, how many videos?
Great to watch on YouTube when somebody does both biceps at the same time.
I know. Oh my god! And Joe, how about this? You're trapped in an armbar, and you try and pick the person up off the ground. Bang! That's happened before to heaps of fighters. They got a bicep tear because they're in that extended position with their arm, carrying the whole body weight of the other person who's got their legs up here. And then their arms in that fully extended position, and you've got that potential for the bicep rupture or the tear of the bicep tendon. So, yeah, it is stuff to be careful of for sure.
That's what you're saying with the shoulder presses, especially with dumbbells, just trying to get the bloody things up into position. It takes like half your strength just to get them up there. You're trying to flick one shoulder, and then by the time you've actually got them up and you're ready to start, you're like, I got nothing left.
Yeah.
So what do you think it is that a lot of people gravitate to those exercises? Are they because they're what's familiar and what people learnt when they first started training, and because they started training that way, they grew that way, and so that there's now an insecurity related to moving away from some of those injury creating movements?
Yeah, because there's a historical reason. Oh, hang on, I've just got this thing coming up. There's a historical reason why all those movements came into being, because originally strength development, it was all about showing strength. So it was all about performing strength in front of large groups of people back in the day, 100, 200 years ago. So it was all about how much weight can you lift up and press, or it was that type of thing. So that's
Oh no, Matt's still doing that most Sundays. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with
that. I'll do anything.
There's nothing wrong with that. But yeah, it's because that's what we all learned. It all started with Arnold Schwarzenegger, his encyclopedia of bodybuilding, where he showed all the exercises he did. And it wasn't just Arnie, it was all the bodybuilders in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we all assumed that if we do what they did, we will look like them. And not realizing that, for starters, Arnie had incredible genetics, number one. Two, they were all on copious amounts of steroids, which we weren't. And three, now we're middle-aged men or beyond. So we're not 22-year-old Arnie's, Arnie did 4, 5, 6 exercises per muscle group. So for chest, he would do flat bench, he'd do incline bench, he'd do incline flies, flat flies, and maybe cable crossovers. And we assumed that, Doug Brignoli talks about this a lot, and it's a really good point. We assumed that all of those exercises contributed to his development. How do you know that it wasn't really the flat bench, the flat dumbbell press, for example, that actually contributed to 90% or most of his development? How do we know that all those exercises contributed equally? How do we know that he didn't really need to do 2 or 3 of those exercises? He would have got just the same growth with maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah.
We don't know. We've just assumed that they all have equal value. So we've got to hit every muscle from every angle. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, the muscles each muscle does pretty much one thing.
Contracts or it doesn't. Yeah, the muscle doesn't know whether you're lifting a barbell or if it's a cable or if it's a push-up or, it's going to contract or it's not under resistance.
Yeah, and it contracts in a certain direction. So think about this, right? The chest, the pectorals, where we've always been taught to do incline presses for the upper chest. Have to do incline presses. Just now, tense your upper chest just so you can feel the upper part of your pec. How would you tense what would you do just so you can feel that nice and hard?
You just bring your arm in.
Yeah. Joe's doing it. Joe is exactly doing it, right? You go like this. What's that? That's a decline press. That's not an incline press.
Yeah.
You tense your upper chest by doing a decline press.
Yeah.
Or a flat press. If you start, no one goes like this to feel their upper chest and start sticking their arm upwards.
Yeah.
You go like this because instinctively we know a decline dumbbell press will work the entire pec muscle from top to bottom. Believe it or not, we've always been taught declines are only for the lower chest. It's not true. You can try it yourself. You go and do a slight decline dumbbell press, and you will feel that upper chest contracting more than if you do an incline press.
So you're now 46 years of age and in really good shape. Have you has your trajectory always been getting stronger and stronger every year, or have you oscillated and had times away, you mentioned through health, like you moved away from the heavyweight training for a while. How's your relationship been with weights over the years, over the decades?
You know, being younger, you want to get stronger and stronger, but you get to a point where you realize you're as strong as you need to be. You know, I'm as strong as I need to be. I'm not going to get any stronger at this age, really. If I do start training a lot heavier, then the chance of incurring an injury goes up. You know,
At what point did you what point did you started thinking that way? Like, was it an injury that got you thinking that way, or?
Yeah, probably having really sore shoulders for about 15 years. So probably about 6-7 years ago, I went, I don't need to keep going heavier and heavier. What I need to do is train intelligently, train correctly with good form, and go to failure on most of my sets, not all of them, but most of my sets go to muscular failure. And if you're doing that, you're training intense enough to build or maintain muscle, have as much strength as you need from day to day. I mean, I'm not, you know, I can't imagine, you know, anything I need to do in daily life that would entail me having to put 200 kilos above my head or something.
Yeah.
All right.
And diet wise, like how things change there, because you're kind of somewhat famous for your marrow soups and that type of thing. You get all your gelatin and out of the bones, the bone broth soups and that type of stuff. You know, that's certainly something you wouldn't have when you were 25 years of age, but now it's become a staple.
Yeah, because we eat a lot of meat in the Western world, but we don't eat nose to tail, so we don't eat a lot of gelatin. We're eating a lot of you know, lean muscle meat.
The tail.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, people would eat the entire animal from head to tail and all the organs as well, and they'd be getting a good amount of gelatin in their diet, and which contains glycine, which we are lacking in because we mainly lean muscle meats. So to supplement your diet with either hydrolyzed collagen, which is a good source of it's another form of gelatin, so it's got a lot of glycine in it as well. Hydrolyzed collagen powder or gelatin granules, which you can buy, or you can make your own bone broth soups, where you're cooking bones and chicken carcasses for 8 hours, and when you put it in the fridge overnight, the next day it's like jelly because it's full of gelatin, which is great for your joints, your skin, cartilage, all that sort of stuff, and your hair. Not that it's
freaking out your friends.
Good for freaking out your friends. But yeah, it's the gelatin and collagen is really important for your joints.
So yeah, I was just going to touch on that. Really good for your joints, good for your hair. You were saying?
Yeah, it's not really working for me, that, unfortunately.
And good for your skin.
Skin.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's interesting that we live in an age where people are always sold on getting skin products and all of this type of thing, but would never think to have a broth stew or something like that, or
Matt's just like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be going the stew. But
Matt is getting moisturizer though, so there you go.
That's right. But what's you mentioned magnesium earlier. What is magnesium helping with in a supplement form?
Magnesium. So magnesium can help with muscle cramps if you're prone to muscle cramps. It can help with it's certainly with the helping regulate the heartbeat. So the the electrical rhythm of the heart. If you're lacking in magnesium, it can cause issues there. Has to be balanced with potassium, so you have to have the right balance there with magnesium and potassium. Magnesium also in the evening is good to help you sleep if you're having trouble sleeping. So for recovery, that's the other thing. A lot of athletes don't put as much emphasis on recovery, do they? I mean, we train hard, but okay, what about the recovery? What about the rest? What about the sleep? So magnesium can help a lot with sleep. And if you want something to really help you sleep, magnesium, glycine, you can get glycine powder from bulk nutrients, very cheap. It's like 5 grams of that. Have a magnesium and then a melatonin, and you'll sleep 8 hours.
And how critical is sleep?
Pretty critical.
The longevity.
You'd be dead without it within a certain amount of days or weeks.
We're waiting for Matt to die. I don't think he slept since Sunday.
Unless you're a vampire. I mean, Matt, do you sleep or?
minimally, yes. Doing a lot of things at the moment, but yeah,
doing a lot of things. Sleeping isn't one of them.
That's right. No, that's right. I don't know. Well, today I haven't slept for a couple of days, but yeah, it's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I got to work all night.
It happens. It happens. Yeah. Yeah. Sleep so important.
Is that from work or
work and then work during the day as well?
Oh, yeah.
It's
That is a man of many interests.
There's a lot going on.
Sleep isn't one of them.
That's right.
But Matt, you yourself would know it's hard to function optimally in the gym when you're not sleeping. Yeah, especially for 2 or 3 days, and the intensity is gonna start dropping off. The recovery drops off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, that's where I guess for me, it's like mentality can switch you into it, but
Yes.
it's we say you get the right song or you get the right scenario that you build in your mind before you train, then you can go through anything. But it does matter in terms of like if it's day 3 of no sleep and then
It catches up with it.
you really got to have a reason. Because it's like your body's saying, "Hey, I need to sleep. I need to, stop."
I love the fact we've met. It's after day 3, but after day 2, just Jesse's girl, and you're doing like 3 sets, heavy work sets. That's all you do.
It's a good song.
It is a good song. It gets you through. But you're right. Yeah, you can push through, but at a certain point, you gotta get that recovery, and I mean, yeah.
So
how many bodybuilders have died lately? Look at that. I mean,
yeah,
it's really.
Lots of reasons for that, but everything catches up with us sooner or later. But yeah, sorry, Dave, cut you off there.
Synthol man.
Yeah. How was?
He burst.
Popped his way.
Rio Vladimir.
He exploded. He popped his cherry.
Rio, the Raul of Castro of
the Raul of Greg Valentino.
Yeah. Can I just jump in for a second, Joe? I do recognize you from CardioFlex.
Yeah,
you fought at the Apex Sports Fest, yeah?
I fought at the first one, yeah.
The first, yeah. You've got a lot of muscle mass. Like you've got,
I did then for sure.
How are you maintaining that with doing all the the cardio and all the fighting training?
Well, I started lifting when I was 17, and I was telling these guys I sort of was given a blueprint, so I didn't have to figure things out myself.
Yep.
And I think now it's just what I have now is what I've got because I don't touch weights.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He's got a weight class. He's got a meet for MMA, 84 kilos. If he starts lifting in the gym, he's going to hit way over the top of that.
Apparently, every time he looks to the right in the gym, he puts on 5 kilos. So be careful. Can't look at the weight section.
Yeah. But you were one of the much bigger fighters, in terms of muscle mass for sure.
Yeah. But that was So it's been a big journey of like with all the cardio, it comes off, it falls off through 8 weeks of running, and I'm always running anyway. But the weight falls off, but a lot of the muscle falls off. But the important strength that I need stays.
That's right.
So like grip strength.
What do you make of some of those studies, Daniel, about the people being able to deadlift their way to cardio fitness enough to be able to run a marathon or a half marathon, and within a matter of weeks?
What? By deadlifting?
Yeah. They deadlifted their way to fitness to be able to run a half marathon on like 6 weeks, and that's all that they did without practicing running.
That sounds a bit odd to me, because to me,
maybe it's an odd story.
Tell me what you guys think. Training is very
parameters.
I just sorry, I thought we discussed it previously, so now it just sounds like a weird random question. But there was a study that somebody had prepared for running long distance by doing deadlifts and not by running, and because they hadn't worn through their ankles and their knees and that type of thing, they were able to do it. But anyway, maybe that's a little bit.
And when are you running your half marathon?
Yeah, that was the next question.
I don't know. I've got to get my deadlifts happening first. I'm going to spend the next deadlifting. That sounds odd to me, because training is usually pretty specific, isn't it? I mean, you get really good at one thing, like you might be really, really bloody good at jogging, but that doesn't necessarily translate to swimming, or
No,
you might be really good at, you might have tons of endurance on the Muay Thai pads, but not so much on the grappling mats. Yeah, it's usually very specific. So that's interesting, but
it may even be made up. So
did you just make it up?
Yes, yeah.
It was that time I ran a half marathon after doing 4 deadlifts, and pretty good time. Anyway, I'll tell you about that next episode.
You want to do a half marathon, but you can't bother that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do. How do I run a half marathon? Doing no preparation. Basically, the question is it just lots of collagen? What are we talking about? What are we going to do?
Lots of positive thinking. Maybe it's Jesse's girl. Maybe you need that playing in your phone.
Just on loop. Yeah, I'll just keep this on girl. That'll be enough.
I'll tell you what, though, for all athletics, and this is interesting because this isn't just athletes we're talking about now. This is everyone, especially as we get old. What happens? So, as an athlete, you've got to use your strength, and you've got to use your strength in fast, explosive bouts of action, don't you? Like, we're not, what happens to us all when we get older? If you look at your average 60 or 70-year-old, everyone moves slower. No one does any fast movements anymore. They don't. They lose their capacity. Well, we all get sarcopenia as we get older, so we all get age-related muscle loss, 3 to 5% per decade. So they reckon that men, or anyone actually, men or women, we could lose between. Hey,
when does that start for you?
I'm not sure. I think it started when I came out of the womb. It was just disadvantaged from the beginning. But, but by the time we're 70, we could have lost 40.
Sitting there with glasses.
We could have lost 40% of our muscle mass by the time we're 70, or even 50%. Half of our muscle mass could be gone by the time we're 70. And that's what happens for most people. We have slow twitch muscle fibers, we have fast twitch muscle fibers, and we have, lesser known, super fast twitch muscle fibers.
That's all that Joe's made up of. Just by the way.
100%. But that's what he'd be using in his MMA. Those super fast twitch muscle fibers. Now, as we get older, no one does any fast movements anymore. So all their super fast twitch muscle fibers just atrophy down. And the super fast twitch fibers consist, from what I've read, between 30 to 40% of our entire musculature are these super fast twitch muscle fibers, give or take, depending on the individual. But so it's really important to keep doing fast, explosive movements as we get older. Now,
do you mean in the gym or in terms of what type of movements would you be suggesting for people that want to?
Deadlifts.
Is it mostly deadlifts? What kind of movements would you be suggesting for people who may be in their mid to late 40s that are looking to keep muscular, for instance?
It's just that mumble there that always gets me. He's always done that mumble where he trails off at the end of a sentence. And sprinting, sprint training, okay. So you can do sprint training outside. You can run your 100 meters or even your 70 meters. You can do. Now, if you're doing that at 45 or 50 years old, we've got to warm up a lot before we're able to do that. Far safer to do it in the gym on a piece of cardio equipment. So an assault bike, a recumbent bike. You can do them on ellipticals as well. But you are doing an all-out 30-second sprint as hard as you possibly can. 30 seconds. 90 seconds recovery, and then doing another hard 30. You do that 8 times. So that is Phil Campbell's Sprint 8 protocol. Another book I'm pitching right here.
I like the fact that the books are mirrored, so they're coming out backwards.
That's true. Phil Campbell wrote this book. It is a fantastic book detailing the benefits of Sprint 8 for everyone, but particularly aging people, middle-aged, even elderly, senior people in their 70s. He's got clients in their 80s and 90s doing the Sprint 8 program, and they're also competing in Commonwealth events. So they're doing long jump and sprinting, and it's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And the idea is to keep those super fast twitch muscle fibers as we age. So, as I said, you can do it safer.
Tell us just a little bit before we depart about escape velocity, some of the ideas around living long enough to be able to take advantage of what technology might have in store for us as to prolong our lives.
Prolong our lives. Longevity, escape velocity. Yeah.
Longevity, escape velocity.
So the idea behind that is longevity escape velocity would be defined as a time when medical science gets to a point where they can actually slow down or reverse the aging process faster than we can age. So if we were to age, say, a year, if chronologically, so if we were to age 12 months, because 12 months has passed, so a chronological age is a year older, medical science has enabled us to either stay at that same age we were a year ago biologically, or even reverse that even more slightly. So if we can get to that point with medical science, the theory is we've reached longevity escape velocity, and then the technology will increase exponentially, and theoretically we can keep that biological age down. So in theory, we don't actually biologically age.
And how far away do you think we might be from that?
Based on my studies and calculations, Dave, and my experimentation, no, based on what author and longevity expert Aubrey de Grey says, he thinks there's a 50% chance that we are about 15 years away from that. So he also says there's a 5% chance that we're about 100 years away from that. But there is a good chance that
he's leaving these options pretty open.
Yeah, that's right. You can't be wrong with that.
Right. Yeah.
But there is
genius. Yeah.
There is a high likelihood that in the next 15 years, this could actually become a reality. Where
even
we
if
could
even if Marcus de Aubrey was able to reverse the aging process, I don't think his hair would be able to keep up, and would probably keep getting older.
His beard is
possibly his nails. But there's already things. There's things happening now which are very, very interesting, where they've actually noticed a reduction in the biological age of rats, mice. Now they're starting to apply it to humans. So about 3 years ago, they did a study called the TRIM trial, where they gave a cocktail of drugs and supplements to participants, and with 1 year of treatment, they managed to reverse their biological age by 2.5 years.
Wow.
Which is pretty amazing. It was the first time that's ever been studied and quantified like that. So what they were trying to do was to regrow the thymus gland, which sits behind our breastbone, which is it's the master controller of our immune system. So we all have a thymus gland, which is what produces T cells. So T cells are obviously very important in terms of immunity. But what happens is once we reach puberty, our thymus actually starts atrophying. It starts to shrink, and that's from early teens. So by the time we're, say, 60 or 70, we don't really have a thymus anymore. It's just like a lump of fat. So what they did was they took a bunch of men, 10 of them, from between the age of 50 and 70. They gave them this cocktail of treatments, and they actually managed to regrow their thymus back, which started to give them new T cells circulating in the bloodstream again, increase their immune function. But what they didn't expect was a complete biological age reversal in all the cells of the body. And that's what they noted, which was something they didn't actually expect. So now they're doing a follow-up trial, TRIMX trial, where they're using, I think they've got somewhere between 30 or 100 participants. They're getting more and more participants all the time. They're trying to really refine this and to see if there's any difference between males and females. And, at what age can we still do this? Can an 80 or a 90-year-old, can they get an age reversal effect? Can they regrow their thymus? That's the type of stuff they're looking at now. So that's really, really interesting, really, really fascinating. There's a good chance that 10 or 20 years from now, we'll all be doing some sort of rejuvenation or age reversal therapies to rejuvenate our biological systems in some way.
So we can get rid of the bone marrow soups from that point.
You got to keep doing that. You got to keep doing it. All that stuff will still be important. Yeah.
How long is it important?
There's another interesting one happening now, which is actually a treatment you can go and get. Matt, you can do this anytime you want. Go to San Francisco. There's a doctor there, Dr. Kiprov, and what he's doing is plasma exchange therapy. So he's basically taking all the plasma out of someone's body and replacing it with saline and albumin, and they're noticing a anti-aging or rejuvenating effect by doing that, because it takes all the old proteins out of the blood, all the old sort of toxins and all the old proteins that tell your body that you're a certain age, gets rid of it all, dilutes it, and there seems to be a rejuvenating effect from that as well.
Wow. Yeah. Well, it's amazing. I mean, the anti-aging stuff is incredible. And listening to Marcus DeVray about was it Aubrey?
Right? Yeah,
Aubrey.
DeVray.
Marcus Aubrey. I was getting confused.
Yeah. Well, his beard confuses everybody. You don't know which part of his mouth is to look at.
But I think he should just shave the beard off, and he would de-age by about 20 years.
He would de-age by 1,000 years.
Yeah.
I think that's his plan. He plans to just shave it off one day and go, look, we did it. Longevity, escape velocity, I made it.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. But no, hearing about all these stem cell therapy and all the different ideas of ways to make longevity in the body is amazing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is incredible. It's really exciting, actually. We
and what are a few practical measures that you're undertaking at the moment, Daniel, as part of your daily and weekly protocols that you feel are ensuring that you get to escape velocity?
Well, there's no guarantees, but we can only do our best, can't we? So, I do my weight training, resistance training 5-6 times a week. I do sprinting twice a week, stretching. I use the sauna at least once or twice a week. So, sauna and then cold showers back and forth. The heat stress is very good for the body. So there's tons of science on that, how beneficial saunas are for you. For recovery, but also the cold showers or cold, plunges and all that sort of stuff can have a really good, because it's the hormetic effect on the body. So it's a stressor to the body. The body reacts by getting stronger or by getting, better in some aspect. So saunas, cold showers, sunlight, not just for the vitamin D, but the near infrared spectrum of light is really, really important. We spend most of our time indoors these days. We get only probably 20 minutes of near infrared light a day. All of our lights in the ceiling, whether it's LED lights or fluorescent lights, there's no infrared light from them. Infrared light's really, really important for the functions of the body, for the cells, for the mitochondria, for the infrared light can penetrate even your bones, and it can actually penetrate your entire body and cause a whole cascade of positive effects. So we just don't get enough sunlight. So I make sure I get out there and sunbathe as much as I can with skin fully exposed, not just your face, get out there, lie out in the sun. Not too much, of course, but now supplements, whey protein, creatine. Creatine is the most studied and safest sports supplement that there is. It does work to a certain extent, increases muscle volume, can increase your ability to maintain muscular contractions over a longer time frame. It's very safe, and again, as we get older, probably even more important when you're older. I mean, many 60 or 70-year-olds could probably benefit from adding creatine in. There's been studies for seniors, and it's proven to be very, very beneficial, but most seniors wouldn't consider it because they think it's a young person's sports supplement, but it could be very beneficial for them. Collagen, hydrolyzed collagen, the bone broths, all that sort of stuff. And in terms of supplements, carnosine, L-carnosine, the amino acid, can be very, very good for helping you maintain muscle mass as we age. So I take carnosine. Carnosine's not readily available in Australia. You have to send overseas for it. A lot of the good ones you can't get here, which is really odd. Carnosine, astaxanthin is a fantastic supplement. It's comes from algae. It comes from Hawaii, actually, and it's the red dye in the algae that makes salmon pink, because they eat a lot. So salmon are actually quite grey. They eat this red algae. It makes them pink, and it actually gives them far more strength and energy, so they can swim upstream to mate at a certain time of year. But astaxanthin protects you from sunlight, basically. So it helps you stay out in the sun longer. You won't get burned as much. Gives you UV protection. And a whole host of other supplements. Vitamin D. A lot of people are deficient in vitamin D. Hyaluronic acid is another good one. Again, not readily available in Australia so much. Hyaluronic acid can really help your skin and joints as well. You have to get that one from overseas, from America. What else? There's so much, there's so much for research, and I do take a lot of supplements, but yeah, can't think of anything else at the moment, but yeah.
So I think you've covered the basics there.
Yeah. Sure. So I'm hoping everybody had their notepads out as you were running through that list. And yeah, so, well, Daniel, thanks so much for joining us here on the podcast. Thanks so much for sharing some of your thoughts on an area that you're obviously very passionate and knowledgeable about. And anybody who is obviously looking on screen right now is seeing the evidence before you of somebody who does take care of themselves and has done for many years, and still, like in the autumn of his years, perhaps still looking virile, young and strong. So thank you very much, Daniel Whyte, for joining us here on the Daily Combat Podcast.
My pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen. Really nice to chat with you all. Appreciate it.